Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Judge Natalia Cornelio is a proud bilingual Mexican-American district court judge with over 17 years of experience. She's a former federal public defender and former civil rights attorney who represented families Trump separated and more. As judge of the 351st District Court, she has demonstrated a commitment to ensuring that all individuals receive equal protection under the law, due process, and the opportunity to be heard. We need a whole lot more judges like that. Thank you so kindly, Judge Natalia Cornelio. Thank you for being on Politics Done Right.
Thank you for having me.
Well, look, first of all, before we get started, a lot of people don't understand our judicial system at all. So tell me where you stand in our judicial system. Tell us a little bit about civil versus criminal, federal versus state.
Okay. So the state has a court system. Federal has its own court system. It just depends on the type of situation. And then I'm in the criminal courts. The counties that have more than, I think, 1.5 million people have designated criminal and then civil courts, family courts that are all different because the population is big and there's a lot of cases that come through for just those subject areas. Smaller counties, including even Fort Bend County, they have judges will handle all different types of cases, civil, family, and criminal, but we have it divided in Harris County. And so I'm one of now 29 felony court judges that serve all of Harris County in the state of Texas. They recently added 6 additional courts because the population was growing and the court system sort of stayed in place, and we're sort of catching up with the population growth and the growth in the system and justice system that comes with that.
Now, so you handle the criminal side of all state issues, correct?
Correct. And there's separate, so the county actually handles, there's county criminal courts, they handle misdemeanors. So state district courts handle felonies. So it can be anything from a state jail felony all the way up to capital case, which would be capital murder. And the punishment ranges go from 6 months to life in prison, or even the death penalty in Texas.
Right. Now, one of the issues that's occurring right now is that the way the bond has become a humongous issue that is pretty much misrepresented by one of the political parties. What I'd like for you to do to the people, to our audience, is to explain exactly what a bond is, who is responsible for creating the laws by which these bonds are governed, and that sort of a thing.
Sure. So government 101, right? The test that some folks took, or, when they were younger, STAR test or whatever, is that there's 3 branches of government. There's the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. The legislative branch makes the law. The executive branch sort of funds the government operations, and the judicial branch enforces the law. So as a judge, I took an oath to uphold the laws and the constitutions of the United States and of this state. And that is my role as a judge. In a criminal court, the process is that when somebody gets arrested, they are brought before a judge. In Harris County, we have 24-hour judges called magistrates or hearing officers. And the role of that judge is to make sure that there's sufficient cause for the charge to even be brought before a court and continue, as well as to advise a person who's been arrested and charged of their rights, potentially appoint counsel if they are eligible for court-appointed counsel because they cannot afford a lawyer, and to set a bond. Every single person is entitled to a bond under the laws of Texas and the Constitution. And so it is a judge's responsibility to set a bond in every single case. So that's just kind of background. Now, as a felony judge, right, or even misdemeanor judge or any type of criminal judge, there's so much more that we do. The bond and the advising of the rights, appointing counsel, is the very beginning of the process. Once a case gets formally charged, this is Benito. He's very needy.
Hi, Benito.
Once a case is formally goes from having been filed as a complaint, meaning an officer swears to the charge and a judge finds probable cause, it gets indicted by a grand jury. Some cases get indicted. Many cases that get filed get indicted. Some don't, though. And once it's indicted, as a district court judge, I have the ability to and responsibility to take the case to resolution, right? So what does that mean? You're charged with a crime, you're indicted of a felony, you have the absolute right to a jury trial. And at that trial, it's the prosecution's burden to prove the allegations that you're accused of beyond reasonable doubt to a jury. To get there, the defense under the laws of Texas is entitled to have access to all of the discovery that the prosecution has in bringing the case. So at the beginning phases of a case, a judge's role will be to sort of manage and ensuring that the discovery is ongoing and in the process of being completed. So what evidence does the state have? It's not the judge's job to know it necessarily unless it comes up, but does the defense have it? What is missing for the case to be able to be resolved either at trial, or, as folks that are more familiar with the system know, a lot of cases don't go to trial, right? They get resolved either by a plea, maybe a plea bargain or a plea to the court. They might get dismissed for a variety of reasons, or they go to trial. Those really are the three kinds of options for a case. And my job is to oversee the process and make sure that at the end of the day that everybody has a right to a trial, or I can preside over a resolution if I'm needed for that. So just to give some background of some of what the judge does in court, besides setting a bond. Now, I know that was a lot of information.
No. That was necessary information. Now, when you get a case and before that case goes to resolution, you have to determine if the accused is going to be incarcerated or if he's going to be released. How is that determined and what governs that?
Yeah, the laws and the Constitution govern that for the most part. Like I said, every person is entitled to a bond. So the judge's job is to set a bond, and it's a monetary amount where we set bail. It's called. That's the monetary amount that a person has to pay to be released from custody, and it's considered like an insurance, right? A way to assure that the person will appear for their court appearances. In setting the bond amount, a judge has to consider a variety of factors, including the nature of the allegations, the ties of the person to the community, potentially any history of the person that's presented to the court, a variety of things, right? So like I mentioned before, there's, a big range of felonies. We have state jail felonies, which are considered the least serious class of felonies. It might be a shoplifting case for someone who has prior shoplifting convictions. So then shoplifting can become a felony. It might be possessing less than a gram of a controlled substance, right? We have a lot of folks who do have addiction and suffer from addiction or drug use problems, and they might be charged in the criminal justice system for that. And then we have the most serious crime, murder, robbery, sexual assault. And then there's different offenses in between that are handled as felonies. So the nature of that offense is always going to be considered by a judge in setting a bail. The way that happens is that we hear from the two sides. There's a prosecutor and then there's a defense lawyer representing the defendant. We hear about those factors and considerations from the lawyers, and we take into account their information that they present us with, as well as their recommendations. As a judge, I don't have any investigative authority, right? So I don't have the opportunity to look into information that's not presented to me. I can ask questions, and based on whether the persons who are, the prosecution is in charge of having the information produced to them by the investigators, they can give me answers or look into it, but I don't have any power to learn of anything that's not presented to me by lawyers. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Let me verify. First of all, the state legislature create laws, and that also governs to some extent the bond. The prosecutor has to come to you and tell you why they may want that person locked up. Again, they're the ones who have to make the case, and the defense has to make the case why they shouldn't be locked up. And you, based on just the information that's presented to you, decide what to do, correct?
Well, no, that's a great question. That's not actually how it works. So the question before a judge is not whether to give bond. or
Thank
bail.
you.
It's what amount of bail should be set, and it's $1. It's going to be $1 amount, right?
Okay, so let me make sure I get this right then, because you are by law, everybody is entitled to a bond, and there's a special case to prevent someone from getting a bond, correct?
Correct. The default is every single person gets a bond, a bail set. And the issue before the judge is what amount of money. And so that's the decision that we're going to make. There is, and as you were saying and alluding to, there is a small classes of cases in which a person could be denied bond, bail. We can use those words interchangeably. It's going to be, the difference is really the security, the surety itself, or, the process.
Right.
Some people can be prevented from being released. In order for that to happen, the government, the state, the prosecutors, they have to file a motion and request a hearing that the person is legally eligible for relief, for denial of bail, and then actually present evidence to support that motion. So it's really rare that we have a hearing with regards to a motion to deny bail. Even if somebody violates their bond, they're entitled to, and a judge decides after a hearing to revoke their bond. The person is entitled to having a new bond set unless a separate motion to deny bail is filed and litigated.
So from everything that you're telling me right now, the amount of bond or the denial of bond is incumbent on the prosecutor to make the case and not the judge to simply decide.
Correct. I have no legal authority to just deny somebody bail because I don't like the charges.
Okay. Well, the reason I want to make that clear to the audience is there are a whole lot of ads on TV right now that is given the impression to the American population, to the Houston population, the Texas population, that all these judges that are out there who have released some people on X amount of bail, of bond, are somehow derelict in their duty, as opposed to it not being a system. I mean, and tell me if I'm correct here, but every day as a judge, you and all your other fellow judges probably set bonds for hundreds of people every day. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's fair. We get about each court, felony court, the data is going to change a little bit because we have these new courts, but I've been in office. This is my 4th year. In my first 3 years of office, I got 2,500 cases filed, new cases per year.
So that means there's a potential that you have to give 2,500 bonds and determine the cost of each of those bonds from simply a statistical viewpoint. For anybody who understands math, there are certain people who are going to go out there and do something. So unless you have a state law that says everybody must be locked up until adjudication, somebody is going to commit some sort of a crime, likely. Am I correct in that or not?
Unfortunately, that's probably correct. Yes.
Judge, here's the thing that I'm trying to get to our audience, because I think it's important to believe that changing judges or somehow changing otherwise very good judges is otherwise going to change the results, the statistical result that as a judge, you must give bail. And no matter what, some percentage of people are going to commit crimes while out on bail. It makes absolutely no sense, and it's completely disingenuous, would you say? And I know you have to be careful in the way you speak as a sitting judge.
I appreciate that. No, I think that it's accurate to say every judge has the obligations that I just described. It doesn't matter what party we are, Democrat, Republican, it doesn't matter. The vast majority of people are successful. My dogs are playing. I'm sorry. The vast majority of people who are given a bond and released on bail, they have no issues. They appear in court. They do not get accused of a new law violation. And that's why the system is the way that it is. Additionally, everybody who's accused of a crime is presumed innocent under the law. And so that has to be taken into account as well. And it's why the law of bail and bond is the way that it is. It's presumption of innocence. And so if you're presumed innocent, the default is that you be free until you or unless you are convicted of a crime. The vast majority of people are successful, and it doesn't matter who the judge is. If we are following the law, we must set bail unless a motion and hearing is presented that is sufficient to overcome that right to bail.
And unfortunately, a judge that is handling a case where one of the people they've released on bail does something wrong, that judge can't come on TV and say, well, the reason, I had to follow the law. They just have to sit down and listen to whatever the politicos or the others say on TV. So what I'm trying to do is make it clear to the audience. These judges have to follow the law. That's what they're doing. They're there to interpret the law, to execute the law. That's what they do. Now, it's interesting because as you were talking about, you have to determine how much bond. It just occurred to me that, my God, if you are a very wealthy, rich person that have a proclivity to murder, and you are a poor person that accidentally murdered somebody, it seemed like no matter what the price is for that rich person, they get a chance for you to let them out, even if you set the bond to $10 million.
It's a question, a policy question that has been looming. It was a part of the bail reform, the bond reform that happened in misdemeanor courts, where a federal court had found that pay to get out system in misdemeanor cases was a violation of the Equal Protection Clause, the way that it was happening. And so certainly there's, for example, I've practiced a lot in federal court before becoming a judge. In federal court, there's not generally an amount of money that you pay to get out. The laws provide either for release or detention. And it's just a different structure. It's a different law. There have been motions in Texas to try to change the law to that, but the law is and has been for a really long time the law of bail, where an amount of bail is set to determine what security can be provided to ensure that you will appear in court. And it's been that way for hundreds of years in Texas.
So, folks, those ads that you're seeing on TV right now are completely disingenuous. They're just there's an attempt to simply oust all the Democratic judges, and because we're in the Harris County area, mostly female judges of color that they're trying to oust. That is what it's all about, and they're using people of color who have had bad experiences with people on bail to try to make the case and hoodwink people of color. And the only reason I'm bringing this up, and this is aside from Judge Cornelio here, but I think it's apropos. The reason I'm bringing this up is that we have to stop being gullible to the political process and instead listen to an educated process as illustrated by Judge Natalia Cornelio here. Judge, so what would you suggest, given the limitations that many judges have in what they can say when they have an active case going that is problematic? How can we handle that on the outside?
It's tricky because it really is, when we were talking about the scale of the system, right? There's, 50,000 pending felonies at any given time. There's now 29 courts. And so it's easy enough for me to say we're open courts. Some courts live stream, some courts are available to access via Zoom and can be viewed. And so the public can become involved in understanding a little bit better the process, what kind of information is given to a judge in real time when they're setting bail. We do have those 24-hour hearing courts that set a lot of bails too. They're judges as well. And so, it's not all done directly by the sitting elected judges. But we do also set bail in several cases. But anybody can watch and see how it works. I know it's a big ask because everybody has a lot to do and it doesn't necessarily make time or can't necessarily make time to watch a court proceeding. But if you ever want to, we're available. There's a website, justex.net, that has a link to all of the felony courts in Harris County. And then the county courts at law also have a separate website. So if you just Google Harris County Criminal District Courts or Harris County Courts at Law, you can find the links to be able to either zoom in to or view the live stream of different judges and see how the process works in real time, and then realize that happens every day of the week, every week of the year, in perpetuity in every court.
Yeah.
But I think that would be really helpful to folks because you see what kind of information a judge is actually receiving when they're making their decisions. We have nothing to hide. We're transparent about it, and help understand it.
I think, folks, I tell you, Judge, before I close here, why don't you give me a closing statement? Because I want to make a short soliloquy after you're done.
Well, thank you. Well, I just want to brag on the work that the criminal courts in Harris County have done. I know since I've taken office and before that, we really have. I mean, I'm proud of how representative the judges are of the community. It's diverse, more women in the judiciary and in positions of leadership than ever before, than in other places in the country or state or even federal government. We are represented and we're really proud of that. We work really hard and we've done some incredible cultural changes to our criminal court system, where we have been committed to making sure that the quality of counsel that's available for people who cannot afford a lawyer continues to improve, so that someone is not being harmed just by not having money to be able to pay for a lawyer. That's part of a judge's job outside of the court. We have shifted the culture in the sense that I think the way that people are treated by the judges on both sides, on all sides, has changed. And there's a kindness and a compassion that's available. The judges used to send people to jail or revoke bail for being a couple of minutes late to court on a regular basis. I understand the need to maintain order in the courtroom, but I also understand the devastating consequences of someone being put in jail for being late. Sometimes people are late because they couldn't get a ride, because the line was long downstairs, because it's impossible to find parking downtown. And so we've really shifted the culture to take into account the different circumstances of our society, of the lives of the people who come through the justice system on both sides. And I'm so proud of the work we've done. We worked through COVID where we had a huge amount. I came into the 351st District Court. There were 3,000 cases. And many of the people on that docket had not seen a judge since before March of 2020. I started in January 1st, 2021. I'm now at 800 cases. We worked at 120% clearance rate to make sure that cases get resolved, because at the end of the day, the bond and the pretrial justice, it's not the goal. The goal is the person guilty or not, and what's a fair outcome, right? And that the end part is where the system is the most important, where we know the result, because people do get acquitted of crimes that they're charged with. People have charges against them dismissed because there's not evidence of their guilt, or there was never even any probable cause to charge them. And then people do get convicted and sent to prison. And that's the right outcome in some cases after the day in court has happened. And so the judges have been really committed to making sure the cases get resolved rather than be in this waiting period before we know whether the person even did what they're accused of or not. So I'm really proud of our work. I haven't gotten to see the ads that you talked about. I try to, I have heard about them and I understand what's happening, and that the judges are sort of trying to be blamed for crime. As I said, we really are following the law. And I would also say that the majority of the judges on the ballot don't have anything to do with bail or bond. They're appellate judges who never set bail or bond and rarely review those decisions, or civil judges who preside over personal injury cases, contract disputes, and issues that have nothing to do with the criminal justice system. And so hopefully folks have an opportunity to do some research into who's on their ballot and learn about them and what we're doing before casting a vote.
Well, Judge, I thought I was going to have a soliloquy, but you said much of what I was going to say. But of one of the most important parts that you mentioned is the judges are there and they follow the law. And number two, do not be hoodwinked by the ads that you see on TV about these judges. The fact of the matter is that most of the judges on your ballot do not give bail because that's not their job. Now, Judge Natalia Cornelio and others, they have that responsibility, but few of them that you have on your ballot actually do that. Judge Natalia Cornelio, thank you so kindly. Muchísimas gracias for giving us the opportunity to speak to you on Politics Done Right.
Always a pleasure to speak with you, Egberto. Thank you for caring about getting information out to the community.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.